Welcome to Mission Oriented, a VeteranCrowd podcast that showcases veteran talent from both the private and public sectors. Their impact is everywhere. We are here to uncover it. Here's your host, Bob Louthan.
Okay, well, welcome everybody to this episode of the Mission Oriented podcast. My guest is a veteran of our podcast show. Phil Dana has been on with us before. He was enlisted in the Navy as a young man, then went to the U.S. Naval Academy, became a surface warfare officer. He's been involved with the Honor Foundation and has been an executive in the pharmaceuticals industry. But today we're going to be talking with Phil about a skill that he has. He is probably the most efficient and proficient and excellent LinkedIn user that I have ever met. Phil, welcome to the program. Thanks for being on the Mission Oriented podcast.
Thanks for having me back, Bob. It's a pleasure.
It's great to have you. Always good to talk with you. Just briefly, let's talk a little bit, just background wise, and then we're going to give a lot of pointers today on how to be an effective user of LinkedIn, specifically for veterans and networking. But before we do that, tell me about the young man who enlisted in the Navy. How did that happen?
Yeah, I grew up in the Navy. My father was a warrant officer, and my grandpa was a Marine in Iwo Jima. My dad served in Korea and Vietnam. And there I was in high school in North Idaho when Desert Shield came around. So what's a young man to do? Get out of the woods and go get in the fight. So 1990 off I went.
How about that? What did you do as an enlisted in the Navy?
I was an air crewman off of aircraft carriers, either catching rides in the back of helicopters or doing whatever needed to be done. Yeah.
And here's a little tail hook. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my picture of my background. I'm particularly proud of that. I'll give a shout out to VFA 213, the Black Lions, a fighter squadron in Oceania, which I have very close ties with. But anyway, so, okay, you go to the Naval Academy, come out, surface warfare guy, right?
Yep.
Served where? East Coast, West Coast, all
West
over
Coast, West Coast, Asia, and all my deployments or operations were West Coast. And got out, stumbled into a military job fair, and thank goodness there was another grad who spoke my language, picked me up, threw me in the desert to build houses for one of the big home builder, and then about 2 years later, offered a role in HR. And I didn't know what HR was, but good thing I listened to him. That was about 18 years ago. And I've been in HR functions, come up through staffing, either at search firms or companies like Sears, Amazon, Intuit, Life Technologies, some other biotech and pharma companies. And most recently was the CHRO at one of the leading gene therapy companies in the world, purchased by Bayer Pharmaceuticals.
That's great. You've had an outstanding career. Now, one of the ways we met was through the Honor Foundation, and Honor Foundation continues to grow, do good work with special operators. Sort of giving them an executive MBA. We'll put a link to the Honor Foundation on the show notes. But today, I want to talk about the importance of networking. And in particular, some of the tricks of the trade from LinkedIn, because how many connections have you had through LinkedIn? I mean, I'm wondering what it's up to now.
Yeah, you max at 30,000. They don't let you go beyond it, but I think I've turned it over 7 times.
7 times.
Yeah.
So what happens when you've got 30,000 and you turn it over? What do you do?
You start deleting people, and so if I get a new request, about once a week, I have to clear 20, 30 slots.
So I've made the cut so far. I'm glad to hear that
You're tier 1, Bob.
I'm still in the top 30,000. That's good to know. But I might be resting right at like 29.5. Who knows? Yeah, it could be out there. Well, that's interesting. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about networks and so forth, and the importance of networks for a veteran. How do you see that?
Yeah, I love buckets of 3. I try to do everything in 3 because it's hard for me to get beyond that. But one, your selfish needs, so your ability to propel your own career. LinkedIn is an amazing ability to, if you follow thought leaders, follow the leading organizations, non-for-profits, universities, industries, companies, and follow content providers, media streams, and other sources. In 30 minutes in the morning over a cup of coffee, you can, again, use the learning curve that most veterans have and digest quickly and efficiently things that can propel you in your career. So that's one selfish need to learn and get better and grow your career. Two, helping others. I think, I strongly believe in helping others. It'll come back around. And that certainly has been the case in my life. But, I'll see a CEO that looks interesting and maybe is leading a new AI company as an example. And I'll think about some of the fellows that are sitting at the Honor Foundation that might be a phenomenal chief of staff or HR business partner or sales for that company. I have no purpose for connecting with that CEO. I'm not going to go be an HR leader in that industry, but I'll connect in the hopes of helping another transitioning veteran. And then, last but certainly not least, size matters. And sometimes I'll be doing a fundraiser. Sometimes I'll, want to put out some critical information about prostate cancer screening. And, if I have 30,000 connections, as we were talking about before. And so when I put out content, I pretty much know that I'll get at least 10 to 15,000 impressions, clicks. I'll get, a couple thousand like, comments, and share if it's good content. And I can only do that by having a large network and making sure that I'm putting it out to an audience that might be interested in what I'm putting out.
All right, let's start with the basics here. Are there some basic tips on setting up your profile on LinkedIn? Let's start with that.
Yeah, I think, LinkedIn really was groundbreaking in its day when it first came out, because we were all tired of resumes. Two-dimensional, half of it's inflated, and you can't really bring it to life. And I strongly believe in, from a career perspective, you're trying to portray your culture and trying to identify the culture that you might align to. And LinkedIn comes along and gives you the advantage of penning videos, penning content. CEOs for the first time were talking about their lives outside of what's on their company website. And to me, I'm trying to strike up a conversation and see if I can help you or you can help me, or both, hopefully. And if you have on there that, you love Ford trucks and you think you're a good cook and you like bourbon, we're going to get to the quick much faster and help each other much easier and deeper than if it had taken a couple hours of getting to know each other. So I think that's tremendous benefit. So you want to bring your profile to life, tag and pin content that aligns your brand and where you want to go, not always where you've been.
Mm-hmm.
The visuals, the headshots, the background photos for your free veteran premium account. You can really tell a story, and hopefully your story aligns with, somebody else out there that's looking to hire somebody like you.
You mentioned benefits. LinkedIn does have programs for veterans. Can you speak to that just briefly?
Yeah, so you can sign up, just Google LinkedIn free veteran account. You can sign up for your free veteran account. And that's not just transitioning straight out of the military. That's veterans like myself, if I wanted to get a free account. It helps because free accounts allow you to have unlimited reach outs. It allows you to add that background photo. It allows you to add that content to your profile to bring it to life.
Okay, so a couple of no-nos probably on setting up your profile. Have a good picture, right? I can't tell you how many people have LinkedIn profiles with no photograph. I mean, come on, how simple is that? The second thing is put your full name on there. Some people put Bob L, well, why do that? Maybe you're the wrong thing. And then I think the third thing is that, people will look at the number of connections you have. If you've got 17 connections on your LinkedIn profile, you're probably not working it very hard, and it's not going to do anybody any good to connect with you anyway. So any thoughts on that? Any other little tricks and showstoppers?
Yeah, I agree with all those. I'm in the job search mode right now, as you know, and I can't tell you how many times in the icebreaker, the other person, the search firm or the CEO or the board member is, well, Phil, we have 500 mutual connections, and I think the mutual connection is the key. If you're a veteran, don't use it like Facebook and connect with all of your last 5 commands. If you want to come out and say the life science industry, use it to connect with life science leaders and or veterans in the life science, because the algorithms will drive your activity from there. And so if you look and feel like a hardcore veteran, no smile, red, white, and blue, you got your dress blues on and no content on your profile, you're going to get nothing but DoD types of reach outs. And so that's the system. Powerful algorithms behind it, very similar to Amazon. You log in and it tells you what you want to buy before you even mention it. How do they?
Right.
I don't know. It's a little scary. LinkedIn is the same. If you start clicking in the same spots and the same types of content, the same subjects, it'll begin to show you additional content that you really do want to see.
That's right. So I think this kind of also falls into the category of dig the well before you're thirsty. I mean, if you're interested in an industry, work it that way. If you're interested in a field or in a business, start to networking. I think that a lot of people come out of the military and their entire network has been, within the military, right? And they haven't thought about outside of that. Okay, so let's talk about the power of networking, but let's talk about engagement, I guess, in the networking process. Take us down that path a little bit.
Yeah, there's different ways to engage. It's like asymmetric warfare. There's different angles and dangles to get to your ultimate mission achievement. If you're trying to help a veteran connect with that CEO of the type of company that they're trying to crack into, it's good to go about it softly. You don't want to just sling a resume at that contact if you don't know the CEO. You want to say, hey, this is, solicit and fee free. I'm just trying to help a fellow veteran who's highly interested in a early morning virtual cup of coffee with you to learn more about you and your organization as they shape their transition strategy. Nowhere in there did I sling a resume. Did I talk about more about the veteran? And every senior leader who built a company, specifically founders and startup and tech oriented, don't mind an early morning virtual cup of coffee talking about themselves or their organization. And if that veteran does that well, does an interview and very gracious and thankful for the time and effort, they could be walking away with an opportunity for a job to be made and shaped for them, rather than being frustrated and clicking apply 200 times a night on their laptop. So LinkedIn gives you that advantage to take very different and, in my opinion, a much higher ROI approach to finding something that you'll be happy with.
Hey, you're listening to the Mission Oriented Podcast on the VeteranCrowd Network. The Mission Oriented Podcast is sponsored by Transact Capital Partners. Transact Capital Partners is a full-service mergers and acquisitions advisory firm specializing in the confidential sale and acquisition of privately owned mid-tier businesses. At Transact Capital Partners, we believe that our veterans continue to lead impactful lives as civic and business leaders. Their leadership and management skills, hardened in the crucible of the military, are key drivers of success. Veterans are mentally tough team players and creative problem solvers imbued with a heightened sense of ethics and personal accountability. Transact Capital Partners is committed to supporting veteran business owners throughout the life of their companies, building professional relationships and networks, advising on capital formation, mergers, and acquisitions. Contact the veterans on our team, Matt Kane, Ross Harris, and Bob Louthan at transactcapital.com. Welcome back. My guest is Phil Dana. Phil and I have been talking about LinkedIn and about networking and the importance of this. You know, Phil, I've found in my experience that it's kind of a saying, and it works in my industry. I'll modify it a little bit. You know, people are going raising money for a business in my industry, I'll tell them, well, go seek the advice and you'll get the money. If you go seeking the money, you'll get the advice. Well, to tailor this thing to the job hunting market, go seek the advice and you'll find the opportunity. If you go seeking the job, you might just get the advice, right? And I try to coach young people. You know, you don't want to be one resume in a stack of 150. You want to network your way into a decision maker. And the best way to do that is not to call them up and say, hey, I'm looking for a job in HR. The best way to get in there is, hey, I'm a young person interested in this field. And could we chat? Am I hitting on 8 cylinders with that advice?
Yeah, you're nailing it. This is not a statement that's braggadocious or egotistical, but I've never gotten a role by clicking apply to a posted job opportunity. I think it used to be 80% of the job market is not posted. I don't know if that's still the case. It's probably an outdated number, but certainly, you know, as you look for director level and above type roles, you've got to touch that C-suite. You've got to take a top-down approach. And I think a lot of times it's the misalignment of culture and the misalignment of the softer skills, even in your military resume, that gets missed. And so, you know, my military resume has nothing to do with HR. I was not a yeoman. I was not a command master chief or an XO. Like, you know, certain roles I could have translated easier. I was pretty much an ops leader, chief engineer on destroyers and an air crewman. But the softer skills and the culture alignment is what I needed to get out in front of me and be able to tell the stories that they would understand and then put me to the top of the stack. And so I think, you know, that's one way of using LinkedIn. The other two is, you know, one of the topics we haven't touched on, I think it's critical, is what do you do with LinkedIn? So you get your profile all dialed in. I encourage everybody, you know, kind of look at mine as an example, the about section specifically, bring it to life, get it looking good before you start reaching out to a lot of people. And then, you know, you want to have some activity, again, the algorithms. And so if you're not clicking, if you want to be an HR leader and you're not clicking like, comment, share on Josh Burson, who's a HR thought leader, you're not following SHRM, which is the leading HR organization, you're not commenting on, you know, the recent, you know, pay transparency law changes. If you're not, you know, if you're just looking at it and not doing anything with it, you know, take 60 seconds, hit like, comment, add a couple lines, and then push it out. And over years, as you build your profile to fit the 3 buckets earlier, my selfish, which is HR, helping vets, which are folks that can help vets, and 3 vets. You know, over years, when I send stuff out, it gets caught. And
Are you tagging these comments? Are there certain hashtags that you're plugging in there? And are you tagging people when you make the comment?
Yeah, like for example, you know, I'm in the job search mode, but I can't just put I'm in the job search mode out on LinkedIn every day. Everyone's going to shut me off and tune me out. And so today was National Pet Day, and I was sitting on the couch looking at my 2 dogs. I love my dogs. They're awesome dogs. I got a Frenchie and a pit bull. Who doesn't love a Frenchie and a pit bull? And so, bam, pictures out. You know, they're horrible coworkers, but they're sure great in supporting me in my transition. Hashtag National Pets Day, hashtag job seeker, hashtag cell and gene therapy, because that's where I'm hoping to stay. Right away, I get 6 or 7 hits immediately, notes saying, you know, hey, let's talk. I might have something, you know. And so it's not always, hey, here's my resume, I'm looking. But sometimes it's the craziest stuff. The one that broke the record for me is when we were going into COVID. I just finished dialing in my office at our house back in Vista, San Diego, and I did a video. I just spun around And so this is going to be my new office where I can bring my whole self and best self to work. And I think we'll be at this for a couple of years. I put that out on LinkedIn before really the wave of home offices came out. I broke 100,000 in 72 hours.
This is impressions or views and
Impressions and the likes, the comments, the shares, the level of engagement. Like, wow, Phil, where'd you find the splicer to do 3 screens? How's your video driver handle it? All the way to, man, you got a lot of Seahawks gear. Yeah, that's right. Go Hawks.
the first hour is really important on a post too. Does that trigger some of the algorithms and actually show it to more people as a result of that?
Yeah, and you want to hit add in organizations or thought leaders that are specifically in that lane. So if I do something, I don't know, if I did a post about workers' comp as an HR leader with this new pay transparency push, I'm going to tag World at Work. I'm going to tag the thought leaders and the organizations that are compensation leaders. And what you want is somebody with 1 million to pick up your 10,000 and push it out, because then you just went 10x.
It's well, all right, let me ask the 80-20 rule. I mean, if somebody was just getting started with LinkedIn, what are the 20% of the thing, there's 2 or 3 things that they absolutely must do to get the big impact, right? Is there just a couple of golden nuggets there?
Yeah, it sounds obvious, but a complete and rich profile that is not boring.
Yeah.
And so
don't just take your resume and put it on there. Put something, worth reading.
The new world. And, I think athletes and military kind of go through their careers and with some thick skin, some protection, and maybe you're the new guy in the unit doesn't know that you're a hardcore bourbon guy. Now you don't want to brand yourself with cigars and bourbon too much on LinkedIn, because I got feedback when I did that 10 years ago.
I think the corn gives me a headache. That's why I like scotch. Okay. But anyway.
But it's open kimono. Like, you want to put things on there. If you think you're the best barbecuer on your block, put that, because that's what you and I are probably going to connect on at first. It's like if you and I went to a conference for veteran support, there's Bob and Phil in the cocktail line waiting to buy a cocktail. I guarantee you and I are not going to talk about your podcast or my support of the Honor Foundation. We're going to talk about the weather, football, what kind of cocktail, and boom, we're going to get to know each other quickly through that angle. That's how you leverage LinkedIn. You don't lick and stick your resume on your forehead and take a picture and throw it out there.
Are you still doing the barbecue before the Army Navy game though? So that do you had to move that from the West Coast to the East Coast?
Yeah, I feel bad. We were really cranking on that American Legion post 416 in Encinitas. It turned into this huge street party. I mean, we'd get the permits, we'd shut the dang street down. It was awesome.
Yeah,
because the weather's always nice, even in December. And now I'm out here in Carolina. I went to the last one, bad outcome. And then we'll go, now it's on a road show. So next year is in Boston. And then I think it's Dallas and Baltimore and DC. So
they're taking the game to Boston next year.
Yeah, they're going to do in 5 cities in 5 years.
They're going to take both corps to Dallas and places like that.
Yeah, it'll probably be limited, but it's a chance to expose it to, it's such a phenomenal. If you just like football a little bit, even my wife likes going to it, unless it's super cold. She won't follow me to the one in Boston, she said, but it exposes it to the business community. I mean, as you know, those suites are packed with some phenomenal networking. I mean, just that weekend in itself is a massive networking opportunity.
I went to an event not too long ago, Phil, and there were Army guys there and there were Navy guys there. And as they went around the room, one of them would say beat Army and beat Navy. Got to my turn and I said, well, I went to the Virginia Military Institute. This, beat Army and Navy. So anyway, but it is one of the great rivalries. I'll say that the Citadel VMI rivalry has many of the same outstanding attributes about it, and I don't know if you can be a part of it. It's just fantastic.
Well,
You know,
so that's a good point, because that exists on LinkedIn. Just as an additional tip, the LinkedIn groups, there's Service Academy, Business Network, there's Service Academy. For me, being a Navy grad, I'm sure there's Citadel and VMI as well. In fact, I'm pretty sure our VMI does a great job with that type of endeavor. And so those closed groups and open groups are critical. There's a huge one for me, all the Service Academy grads at the C-suite that are in life sciences and healthcare. Naturally, that helps my job search. And normally when you go to, I'll be in LA going to a big cell and gene conference next month, and there's literally a Service Academy get together on the front end of it. And that's pretty common at some of the larger industries and bigger conferences. And you wouldn't know that unless you're in the stream and communicating.
well, Phil, I'm amazed at God, turning 30,000 names over 7 times. I mean, folks, you got to walk before you can run. I got to tell you, I felt pretty good having 8,000 names or something like that in my LinkedIn profile. But I told you at the beginning, you found a way to do this on a totally different level. It's fantastic what you've shared. Hey, how do people get in touch with you? And if you've got any words of wisdom, or anything to point us to. Oh, I did have one other question. God, I almost forgot to ask. There's a product called Sales Navigator on LinkedIn. Do you use Sales Navigator, or do you find your sources elsewhere?
I don't. I know it's a tremendous tool, very similar to LinkedIn recruiter seats that are specifically behind the curtain. There's, project management capabilities of bucketing, building, CRMs. And I've used LinkedIn Recruiter, of course, in my job for years, since it first came out. And I suspect Sales Navigator is the same, where you can make it efficient, make it look professional, bucket it, manage it, and hold on to it. So LinkedIn, the reality is, in the last 5 years, LinkedIn has added over 20 major upgrades, and I don't think they're done. They're continuing to evolve, continuing to listen to the customers. There's so much capability to that thing. And what, veterans have an unfair advantage to where it could be free if you're really good at it.
Mm-hmm. If you're not on LinkedIn, my only question to you is why not? I can't imagine why somebody wouldn't want to do it unless you're absolutely trying to disappear. Maybe you're in special operations out there, and you just don't want to raise your profile, and you have a legitimate reason. But I tell you, LinkedIn is an enormously powerful tool.
It is.
It is. Well, listen, Phil, we're going to put the link to your LinkedIn profile. I'll tell you right up front, folks, you better have a good LinkedIn profile, because you're going to have to knock one of those other 30,000 people off the pedestal in order to get in. But do that. And Phil, any other ways you want people to get in touch with you?
No, and LinkedIn's always good. And Bob, thanks for everything that you do to support veterans, all the different podcasts, and you're one of the stalwarts out there that folks
love it.
Are in the veteran support space. They need to know who you are as well.
I tell you what, I just love it. I feel very privileged to be a part of this community. So thanks so much. Hey, you've been listening to the Mission Oriented Podcast on the VeteranCrowd Network. Thanks so much for tuning in. Check our show notes at VeteranCrowdNetwork.com. You'll find the show notes there. We'll have links to ways for you to get in touch with Phil Dana, and a little bit of other additional background information and some inside secrets and trades. Check out our other podcast episodes. Phil, thanks so much for being a guest on our podcast today. I'll say it, go Navy and beat Army, even though I was in Army, but go Navy, beat Army. I'll give you that. And I'll throw out a Bravo Zulu to you from the Mission Oriented Podcast. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Bob.
Hey, that's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to Mission Oriented. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and you won't miss an episode. To learn more about Mission Oriented and the VeteranCrowd Network, visit us at www.veterancrowdnetwork.com.